Hello again. So I'm pretty new to the whole public speaking thing. So as I stand here, I could really ask myself, like, what am I doing? Why am I on this stage? I'm a fairly quiet person, and I don't like drawing attention to myself. So this is quite an unnatural thing for me to do. I'm not going to lie, I can feel my heart beating really fast. And my comfort zone is like way over there, and I'm like hiding around there. So if I'm feeling like this, you might be wondering, like, what on earth am I doing up here? And that's a good question. And it's something I often have to ask myself in situations like this. I came here today to learn, of course, and I'm speaking to you because, selfishly, I would quite like to work on my public speaking skills. And by sharing something with you, I'm also learning something myself. And the only way I could make this happen today was to really push myself out of my comfort zone. I've had to deal with imposter syndrome, worries about getting it wrong, worries about looking like an idiot in front of loads of people, and these worries haven't gone away yet. And I really hope they do with experience. But until they do, I just have to accept them. I have to learn to feel comfortable with potentially looking like an idiot in front of everyone. And so the first time I put myself in this situation was around 18 months ago. I'm a front-end developer. I learned to code between the classroom at university and in my own time. I made my websites work in whichever way I needed to, just to pass my assignments and things like that. And I also built some really small, like, terrible websites just to make a few quid while I was at uni and to sort of learn the ropes and stuff. And I used endless plugins, like jQuery plugins, WordPress themes, and basically anything I had to just to get the job done. I often copied and pasted code from various forums and blog posts. I was what Chris Heilman would call a full Stack Overflow developer. I don't know if you've heard of this, but a full Stack Overflow developer is someone who basically copies and pastes everything instead of learning how to do it for themselves. And that's exactly who I was. And it satisfied me for a while. And it got me through my first few web agency jobs where the time was monitored and this approach was just completely acceptable. And after about 6 to 12 months of working like this, I decided that I couldn't do it anymore. It really didn't feel right to just not know so much of what I was adding to my sites. And yeah, it didn't feel right. I wanted to learn how to write JavaScript for myself and understand any of the code that I was putting in, not just JavaScript. And so I also wanted to have time to learn this as well, which is really important. And that's how I ended up at Clearleft 18 months ago. So I was the first permanent junior hire at Clearleft, and I suddenly found myself surrounded by loads of really experienced and talented people. And I often get imposter syndrome, and I find it difficult to believe sometimes that I can contribute anything useful when I'm surrounded by so many people with like so much more knowledge and experience than me. And I've had to learn a lot of JavaScript and other continuously work on my coding skills, and I've had to really keep up with what I need to do for each project I'm on. And I also haven't used any plugins in production code since I've joined Clearleft. And if I'm honest, I actually find coding quite hard. Sometimes I'm slow at it. Sometimes my code doesn't work. And sometimes I feel like I just can't do it. And I've wasted hours trying to fix bugs caused by one missing character. And I've spent ages refreshing the wrong pages, and then I really feel like an idiot. And then sometimes my code works, and it's amazing, and it's the best feeling ever, and I could run outside and hug someone. And I love hearing about other people's frustrations. I know that sounds really bad, but it reminds me that this is normal, and these highs and lows happen, and it's fine. So my advice to anyone learning a new skill, particularly web development, would be to never be afraid of asking for help, because you're not alone. It's okay to say that you don't know. And speak to other developers around you, because they will have experienced the same frustrations, and together you can solve problems quicker. So what has made constant learning easier to manage for me is being lucky enough to have a mentor, Jeremy at Clearleft, who was already assigned to me when I joined. And he's given me all of the support and teaching that I needed to sort of get to work on large projects and improve my skills quickly. And it's been challenging at times too. I think it takes a little time to get used to working closely with someone, particularly if you don't know them very well. And a mentor also needs to get to know how the student responds best to different ways of teaching and different ways of learning and things like that. You need to listen to each other, and you need a lot of patience. And it's really important to build a positive relationship. And so what was interesting for us, and probably a comfort, was that neither of us had done this before, and neither of us really knew what we were doing. So if I had to give 3 pieces of advice from my perspective to anyone thinking of mentoring, they would be, firstly, find the right level of challenge. So give junior developers the support they need to work on challenging projects, but also make sure that they have enough work that they can do unsupported or with minimal support so that they can build up their confidence. Like, if you feel like you can't do anything without support, then it's kind of detrimental to self-belief. So it's really good to feel independent as well. Also, show up when you need to. That sounds quite obvious, but arrange regular meetups. So firstly, so that both parties remember to show up, but also so that you have that space that you need to take everything in and to be independent as well. And learn from each other. So mentors should make it clear that they're learning as well. And I don't think there's any right or wrong approach to this. It can vary depending on who's doing it, the abilities, the skills, and preferred ways of learning and teaching and things like that. And you could even try reverse mentoring, where the less experienced party will give some coaching to the more experienced party. I know a couple of organisations are trying this at the moment, and it could be an interesting experiment. So perhaps you could pair a junior developer with someone like a CEO who maybe not have otherwise spoken to each other before, and you sort of end up having a lot more empathy for their roles and just knowing that each other are there. Or it may be that a junior learns something and they teach that to a more senior member of staff, and perhaps, even though the senior would already know how to do that bit of code, perhaps the new approach that the junior has offered is something new and useful. And perhaps a junior, like, sorry, I've just forgotten what I was going to say. No, I'm going to move on, sorry. So I'm very lucky to have learned so much from people sharing what they know. And until recently, it didn't occur to me that sharing what I know could be useful too. Some great advice I received from Jeremy is to have my own website and document what I'm learning. My initial response to this was just like, what's the point? You know, everything I learn, everyone already knows, so what's the point in sharing this? Because I'm not telling anyone anything new. But it turns out there's some really good reasons for doing this. Firstly, readers get a better understanding of something when it's explained by the learner rather than the expert. And writing things down can help me understand them. So I might learn something, I document it, and then a few months later go back to it on a project because I need reminding of how to do it. And for me, that's just a really useful resource to have. And there's also, always lots of people out there who are still learning, and you never know when someone might find that useful. I couldn't believe it when my old university lecturer got in touch and said that she was using my Flexbox posts in her class material. And so I was really surprised to hear that. And so it turns out I can teach, and in fact we can all teach. I discovered CodeBar around the same time I joined Clearleft. And CodeBar is a place for underrepresented groups in tech to learn how to code in a safe and collaborative environment. People give up their Tuesday evenings to teach each other how to code for free, and local web agencies will offer their workspaces for free, and they sponsor the pizza that we share at the start of the event each week. And so I initially attended CodeBar as a student because I wanted to work on my JavaScript skills, and then I found CodeBar to be so much more relevant in university. I was learning from industry professionals and socializing with people who had the same goals as me. And a few months later, they were short of coaches, so I nervously offered to start teaching some HTML and CSS to beginners. And it amazed me that I, a junior developer at the time, could actually teach anyone anything. And so a few months ago, I joined the team of organizers at CodeBar. And I'm really passionate about providing a place for people to learn, to code, and at the same time improve diversity in tech. The most amazing thing is seeing people join CodeBar at the very start of their learning journey and watch them progress. And so this year I helped two women, I saw two women who I helped at CodeBar get their first jobs in the industry as junior developers, and I remember introducing them to their first lines of HTML and CSS, and now they're doing really well in their jobs. And it's just really nice to see, and it makes me feel quite proud. And I'm proud to be part of a team who works so hard to make this event possible. And I'm also proud to be part of an industry where so many people are willing to just give up their own time and money to share their knowledge and help each other learn. So I would like to end my talk with this message. However much or little you think you know, there's always more to learn and there's always more to teach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Wow. Thank you very much. First of all, I'm pretty sure I know how you guys felt, but thank you. We've heard some great talks today. That was the most engaged I've been through one. Thank you for your authenticity.
Thanks.
Tremendous. Let me start to sort of pick this apart a little bit. You mentioned 2 or 3 terms, first of all. You've used mentoring and coaching, and I'm not sure whether we've touched on therapy or not. How do you differentiate between those 3, just to be clear what we're talking about?
Well, that's a difficult one, actually. I don't know. Well, I think, I guess they could overlap. Yeah, I think they do overlap. I mean, I guess the way I've sort of seen having a mentor has been it's been a bit of coaching, teaching, actually teaching skills, but then also being there for just moral support. There's that. I see that as being in the mentoring side, perhaps not so much in the coaching. So I think coaching would be here's how you do this, here's how you write this code. Whereas mentoring extends to, why don't we, like Jeremy say, why don't you set up a blog and start writing these things down? There's things that add on to the skills,
Yeah, it definitely overlaps, and one leads to another as a continuum. In terms of sort of ratios, just roughly so you can get an idea where you felt the most benefit, has it sort of been a majority of kind of emotional and support benefit, or a majority of professional advancement, sort of technique kind of benefit?
Oh, wow. Both have been, it's been a lot of both, really.
So there's no ground, basically, that you and Jeremy don't cover?
No, I don't think so. Would you say? I think we do a lot of there's lots of, the skills I need. We'll have code reviews and things, so if I'm doing some work, then we'll have lots of code reviews, or if there's something I don't know, we'll look at it together. Yeah. But then there's also things like today, Jeremy's there come on, go get this talk, you can do this and stuff like that. So, there's all sorts of help.
The thing that strikes me straight away is that the level of trust that you guys have built up must be immense.
Yeah, definitely, I'd say so.
How long's that taken?
It happened fairly quickly, I think.
There were rough patches, on my part.
I know.
Where, say I'm having a bad day, and I end up taking it out on Charlotte, and I realize I'm being a dick, and apologize, and make sure never to do that again, because exactly it's going to break that trust, that I'm saying, you can always come to me, or you can tell me something, and then if I kind of betray that trust by having an off day, and letting that affect the relationship, then you gotta.
That sets you back.
But that kind of works both ways, really, because if I could potentially do that too. If it's when you're working closely with somebody, you have got to try and keep not let things like that affect it. And
okay.
It's tricky as well because on the one hand I'm trying to encourage Charlotte and sort of push her beyond the comfort zone, like she's talking about. But, I don't want to be the tyrant either, saying you have to do this, do this. I command you to do this thing you're uncomfortable with, but, try and encourage without ordering, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
It's tricky.
I mean, you said in your talk that one of the major pieces of advice for a mentor was to show up when needed. And the commitment you're making, Jeremy, is to be there and not let your bad moods get in the way and those sorts of things. What's the commitment that you're making? What's the effort that you've pledged to put on the table each time that makes it work?
Me?
Yeah.
I suppose we didn't really agree. You don't physically agree, this is what we're going to do. It was, I think it's evolved as well. When I started, we sat together and it was very much I think we just talked a lot my work, and I think you were there quite a lot. So when I was working, Jeremy would be like, "Are you all right? You're doing this?" And we'd look at things together a lot. And then as I've been there for longer, like now, it's sort of more I go to Jeremy. So it's like an unspoken thing, really. We didn't really ever say this is how often we'd do anything. It's just always been, I think we've always just been near each other.
Okay, and you've co-defined it. It's sort of grown and changed.
I mean, like Charlotte said, both of us figuring this stuff out. Neither of us did this before, so we certainly didn't have a plan. And I don't know whether we did it the right way, the wrong way, an okay way. If we were to repeat the exercise with someone else, would I do it the same? Would I do it differently? I don't know. It's hard to tell. We're still figuring it out.
I think also, but there have been times where you've been away a lot, and I might have gotten, we've physically arranged things that we've done, haven't we? So, yeah.
Okay, fascinating stuff. I'm just going to carry on because this is really interesting, but please do jump in. Has anybody got anything they want to ask Charlotte at this point? Yes, please.
Yeah, just wondering, with your relationship when you set out, did you have any objectives for both of you that you used to measure against when you actually reached those? So how do you know when the relationship reaches its end and you've achieved success within the mentor-mentee?
Did everybody hear that? Yeah. Yeah, good, thank you.
No, that's a good question. I don't know if we ever did that. I don't think we have necessarily decided, but we have actually, once I'd been at Clearleft for a year, we spoke about it a lot, didn't we? We talked about how it worked, how we'd work together, and then we made that decision that we would then, I would go to Jeremy. So we decided that at that point, that Jeremy was like, you've progressed, you've learned, you've done all these things, and you're doing really well, so let's flip this now. I'm going to leave you to do what you need to do, and you can come to me. So I think we've just had regular check-ins, maybe, over every few months.
But that wasn't a goal. It wasn't like, okay, by this date, we want to change it so that, we're not sitting together, and it was just, it kind of happened.
As it happened, there wasn't really anything set up front.
And you just had to deal with it as well. I remember actually when you were saying, like, maybe we don't need to be sitting next to each other now, and, I could sit over here and I'll come to you when I need help, and it was a bit like, I'm flying the nest, they grow up so quickly. And, time to be free. Yeah.
I think it's important to come from the learner. I think it was important that came maybe from me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it worked quite well to come from me, maybe. Yeah.
So it was just a reversal in dynamic. It became pull rather than push at a certain point.
Yeah, the balance changed.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Nice. I can keep asking these questions, but I'd love you to as well. Any others from the audience? Yes, please.
I wonder what your thoughts are, probably to both of you really, on I freelance, so I'm working from home quite a lot. I've got people in the community and the developers that I know, but how could this type of relationship sort of expand into the freelance community, and if there's any websites out there that are around sort of trying to match people together and help in that respect?
I'm pretty sure there are people, more senior practitioners who reach a certain stage and want to give back, and they set up a kind of they set up some sort of mentoring thing where just get in touch and we'll meet up for a coffee or something, or if it's distance learning, maybe it's a Skype chat. I know a few people who are doing that. Colleagues of mine and people who used to work at Clearleft, and it's definitely happening. I don't know if there's anything formalized. There may be one or two startups trying to formalize it into a system, but I'm not sure whether it lends itself to being formalized. And it's better if it's more, you seek it out and the person is also seeking you out and you find each other. But I'm pretty sure it's happening.
I've seen some meetups in Brighton, maybe one meetup where it was aimed at mentors and mentees meeting each other. So I guess it is, you're right, seeking it out, maybe organise one.
Yeah, I love the observation in the question as well, that this was in a corporate environment. This was something that your work had set up. It crossed my mind. Did you join the company or partly because they had a mentoring system in place? Was that one of the plus points?
Yeah, well, it was because I made that decision that, like I said before, I didn't want to be that sort of full Stack Overflow developer that, I mean, obviously we copy and paste now and again to an extent, but I didn't want to not really know what I was doing. So to me, it was really important to work somewhere where there was some time for that, and learning was really important. So that was definitely one of the reasons I joined.
Yeah, good. I can imagine that. Anybody else want to jump in?
Quick Quick question for both of you, really. Based on what your experience that you've had as a mentor-mentee relationship, how have you found getting inspired, both of you, by you being with someone a little bit more junior and having that drive to learn and that passion, and then from yourself having someone more senior? I suppose it goes back to what Chris was talking about before about this spark and having that spark to learn and that continuous learning.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it's been, the most inspiring thing I've done in the past few years. I'd kind of lost the spark a bit. I think particularly on the web, we all go through that phase of questioning, like, oh, what's it all about, Alfie? You know, like, why am I doing this? Why am I a web developer? What do I do? What is web development, right? And I'd gone through the phase of like, I'm a front-end developer. I write code. And for a few years then, I wasn't writing so much code. Well, if I'm not writing code, what do I do? Who am I? You know, what defines me?
Web developer midlife crisis.
Yeah, exactly. I think we have many web developer midlife crises. And I was a bit in the doldrums, a bit kind of looking for, that spark. And then we're trying this idea, we'd bring on, a junior person. I would be dedicated to that person. And that kind of defined what I do at the company for a while. It gave me a huge boost. It was great. I mean, it was a risk. Neither of us had done it. The company had never tried it. It was an experiment. But I would say hugely successful. And I mean, there's the obvious successes from a company perspective. Like, well, now we've got a kick-ass developer because we invested the time in Charlotte, and that helps the company. But there's also, greedily, the personal thing for me. Like, I got so much out of it. And now the trick is to repeat it with other people. I see other people at Clearleft who are maybe going through the midlife crisis, wondering, what do I do? What's my purpose? I'm not writing code anymore, or whatever it is they would have done a few years ago, saying, I think I know what can give you that spark. And let's try and repeat this process. Let's take someone else on board, someone junior, someone straight out of college maybe, and invest that time, because it's so beneficial for the senior person as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my take on it.
I have a question. Can it trickle down further? So you have a university degree. Could this kind of map down further, where you get somebody who maybe has not very much experience at all, doesn't want to go to university, doesn't want to take on that debt burden, and you take a chance because you feel that they have passion and enthusiasm, they maybe don't know anything at all?
Just this week, Dan Mall wrote a post about his apprenticeship program. So that's very different to what we're talking about here, because like I say, Charlotte did have experience in front-end development. He's talking about people who have no experience of anything to do with web development, design, anything, and bring them in as apprentices, and then they can become, I guess, interns, then junior, and then senior. And it's really fascinating. It seems like maybe higher risk, but also higher reward. He just published this post this week, and it's really well worth reading. I'm really fascinated by it. I'd love to give it a try. But I think it could. And he's kind of proving it. He's testing it and proving it out.
Thank you. And I love the idea that you switched roles sometimes as well, and you mentored Jeremy.
Well, we haven't actually tried that. That was just something it's something you could try. I've heard a few organisations trying it. So a friend of mine who I organise Codeball with, she's doing it at the moment, and it was really she's a developer paired up like a CEO, and the main reason for that is so that they just acknowledge that they exist, and I'd say otherwise they might not speak. It's some empathy and stuff like that. But I think it'd be a really interesting thing to try. I think, I mean, if I've learned stuff, I've sort of shown you, talked through it with you and stuff. And I don't know if maybe that's been useful for you sometimes. I don't know. But I think it could be a good thing to actually implement and try out.
And are you mentoring other colleagues?
No, I'm not. No.
Yep.
But I think it could be a good thing. I think we were talking about it earlier, weren't we, that potentially that would be a good thing to set up amongst the whole company. But I do coaching at CodeBoss, so I do help. I help teach sort of more beginner people to code and give them advice, career advice, like trying to get into the industry. And they're not from university. These are people who are literally maybe have had a career for the last 5 years and they're looking to retrain. And they're learning from people in the industry, which I think is probably more relevant sometimes than some of the university stuff.
I think it depends on the university.
Probably, Maybe, it probably does. But the course I did, it's a lot more relevant,
Thank you. I would like to sort of bring in a video that we shot very specifically about mentoring relationships. Just before we press play on that, any other comments that people would like to make? Or yes, please, So-
Still on. You mentioned the imposter syndrome, which is something I think every person in our industry suffers from. I myself suffer from it. I think I did something very similar to you, whereby halfway through my university degree, I realised, oh, actually, this isn't what I want to do with my life. Fell in love with programming, taught myself, and then, did the same as you, get a few little projects out of the door so that, you get your foot up the ladder, and then eventually made it into an agency. Now, I've never really had a mentor in the sense that you guys have, which I'm a little bit envious of. I think it would have helped me massively in my development. But do you think that the relationship that you guys have and the way that you work, has it dispelled the imposter syndrome that you might feel, or does it just keep it at bay for a little bit?
It does help with it, because if I am feeling like that, I can talk about it. And Jeremy can, reassure me that it's fine. I think if I didn't have that, particularly where the company I'm at now, because there are so many people who are very knowledgeable and who know a lot. So I think without that, it would have been really difficult. So it's helped maybe more so because of that situation. But yeah, no, if I ever have any worries, I can just talk about it. So it's quite good.
Never get rid of the imposter syndrome, though.
No,
Not
no,
completely.
definitely not. Like, even today, I'm like, oh, there's some really good people speaking. What am I doing? So yeah, it always happens, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of the time what I'm telling Charlotte is bad news. That it's never going to go. Either it's imposter syndrome or like, is it naming things in CSS ever going to get easier? It's like, no, no, this is forever. This is forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question, thank you. Well fielded as well. Can you ever see a day, or maybe you're doing it already, where you need a mentor, Jeremy?
Oh yeah, no, totally. I'd love that. What I have now is I have a network of very specific people who I know are experts at things, and I'll call on them and it's like, hey Jake, I've got an issue with my service worker. And like, I don't want him to fix the problem for me. I want him to teach me how to fix the problem for myself. Well, that's what I would be doing with Charlotte, is, trying not to grab the keyboard and write the code myself. That's bad. But trying to encourage her to figure out how to fix the problem for herself. So absolutely, I mean, it's kind of what Charlotte said at the end. There's always more to learn, and there's always more to teach. So, and I think if you'd ask anybody who is mentoring anybody else, they would say that they would also need mentoring themselves in maybe in other areas. There's things I'm rubbish at, and definitely appreciate help.
Yep. I like that you picked up. There's a small network of people that you rely on, like this distributed mentor almost.
Yeah, pretty much like, oh, that's my go-to person on this one topic. So, like, I have an accessibility question, I know who I'm going to call, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I think that's what Brad was alluding to as well. Does anybody else have any experience of this, and if so, how have you managed to gather these people around you? Do you know when you've met one of them and deliberately keep them around because they're going to be useful in your mentoring network later on? Does anybody have an experience of this?
I don't think these people have been shy, but I don't think there's a single developer that doesn't have that. I mean, from my own experience, every agency that I've worked in, I've met people that do, what I would consider is magic. I don't understand it, but years later, I then do understand it. I can not only give that advice to other people, but then I save that person that originally taught me this. And they're a contact, hopefully, for life then. And I can go back to them, even though I don't necessarily work with them anymore, and say, oh, hey, you were incredible at React. I've got this React problem. Do you mind helping me? And the culture that we have in this industry, you will ever go to anyone, unless they're ridiculously busy with a deadline, where they're going to turn around and say, no, mate, I'm not going to help you. Everyone likes helping each other in this industry, which is why I fell in love with it.
Yeah, that's so true. There's something in the web that's leaked through to the culture of the people that work on the web. Okay. The web being this open place where you share by default, things are open by default. Your default expectation can absolutely be, I think this person would help me. And 99% of the time, yeah, they would. I love that.
I love that too. That's great to carry around with you, yeah.
Going to the freelancer guy over there, asking about the remote and how does that work in that context. I think it was about 2 years ago I met a woman at a web design conference who was on a web design course. I'm not going to say what that course was, but she said to me at the end, we were drinking some pints and what have you in the bar after the event, and she said, would you mentor me? And I said, okay, how's that going to work? Because you're in Germany and I'm in Belfast, so okay. So we kind of navigated through that, and we used Skype a lot, we used email, we used occasionally talked on the phone, did a bit of DMs, all that kind of thing. And we managed to make that work really, really well. At the time, I remember thinking, God, I already teach a whole bunch of students already, so do I really need somebody else in my life? But it was incredibly rewarding because she wasn't one of my students. She was somebody else. And apart from the fact that she was on another course and I had to hear about that course's problems, which for me was frustrating as an educator, why is that not fixed? It was incredibly useful for me as well as for her. So to the freelancer guy, I would just say, ask somebody, because for the most part, as Alex was saying, most people will say yes, unless they're stupidly busy, in which case there's someone else, I'm sure, you know.
Thank you, excellent. At this point, I'm going to ask Christian to wander up and just check everything's in order. Charlotte, I'm going to come to you for the final word, if I may, on the mentor-mentee thing. Summing it all up and sort of reflecting on what you've heard as well, if there was one thing that you could say to people that were considering this, either considering a jump into a company with or without a mentor framework in place, or somebody that just wants to approach somebody to enter into that relationship with, what advice would you give them?
Oh, wow. Well, I'd obviously, firstly, you've just got to go for it. You've actually got to do it, because it's easy to sort of get stuck in a rut and just sort of keep going. And you've actually got to you've got to just get out of your comfort zone and just try and find people. I went to a lot of events and things to try and find Clearleft. I did a lot of went to a lot of conferences, volunteered, went to lots of meetups, and it's just, you just have to really, you are in charge of your learning, so it's kind of up to you to just try and find someone and get out and do it. So I guess, yeah, my advice is to just do it. Yeah,
Thank you. And thanks again to you and everybody that's contributed in that section. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.